Resuming debate. There are 6 minutes remaining for the honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we talk about this bill, we have to understand what happened initially, and that is that in the 2009 budget, the Minister of Finance had created a national task force, a working group whose mandate was to provide the minister with advice on the issue of financial literacy. So this task force, of course, worked. It was a group comprised of different individuals, entrepreneurs from various sectors, including workers, volunteers, teachers, but as well people from the business and financial sectors. This task force provided a report with 30 recommendations, one of which was to create the financial literacy leader. And what has happened is that after that, no consideration whatsoever is being given to the other recommendations contained. They're not in this bill, and I would have to say I'm surprised there's 30 recommendations and only one is being listened to. So furthermore, we could have described very concrete tasks for this position. One of the recommendations was the following. The working group recommends that the Government of Canada, with regard to the renewal of the urban Aboriginal strategy in 2012, ensure that literacy programs for young Canadian Aboriginals be provided. So this is a concrete recommendation with regard to financial literacy that could have helped. We all know that young Aboriginal communities are experiencing poverty, and one of the problems often is when we talk about financial literacy is that if you need to buy a car and you don't understand concrete measures, the terms of the lease or the loan, you don't understand what happens when you use a credit card. Sometimes you think because you don't understand, because you don't have a good financial literacy, you don't understand that you're paying 10 or more in interest rates, and it's really actually 28%. Because the advertising isn't easy to understand. So this is one of the groups that could have been helped. And also the working group recommends that the Government of Canada provide recent immigrants with financial information and educational services adapted to their needs with regard to programs, settlement programs for immigrants and language courses for immigrants in Canada. So this is another group that could have been targeted, but that is not at all taken into consideration. These recommendations are not included in the bill. And when we talk about immigrants, some of these immigrants are coming from countries in Africa, for example, where, I apologize for this expression, but approximately 1% of the population has a credit card and a debit card, and they trade for food also with money, but they use they barter for things. And in a system like Canada, where we have thousands of pieces of paper, you don't understand the language, and you don't have a comparable level of education, and then you wind up in a system like this, and people have to figure out how to understand a tax system that is completely new to them, and they the government has only decided to apply one of the recommendations to create the position of a financial literacy leader like this. Well, to me, I don't understand the priorities. I think it's impossible to understand, because when you have 30 recommendations, excellent recommendations, in fact, and they're not taken into consideration and they're just ignored, I think it's kind of strange. And also another recommendation, the committee recommends working in cooperation with the provincial governments and the territorial governments to provide Canadians with the tools that would allow them to be able to teach financial literacy to their children. Because financial literacy, if you teach it progressively in adapted language to children, adolescents, college and university age students, there's a chance that they'll understand. This could have been a good thing to do with the provinces and the territories to ensure that students could understand, that children could understand, and they could have the tools that they needed that were adapted to their needs. instead of inventing things. And that's another recommendation. There was another recommendation that also would have allowed employers to be able to provide financial literacy training so that their employees could understand correctly their pension plans, the importance of investing in RSPs. But this isn't done. And I think it's impossible to understand. In this bill, there should have been targets, there should have been priority recommendations, could have said, okay, whoever the financial literacy leader is, yes, we're creating this position, but we're also saying that it is essential for there to be priorities that we take into consideration right now. These recommendations, otherwise, the work done by the task force is for naught. I think there's a lack of priority, a lack of common sense. You don't create a position without knowing what the objectives are, what you're going to do, what is a priority to implement in terms of initiative. We have to know where we're going when we create a position like this. Otherwise, we're simply sending a check to a senior public servant who doesn't even know what he or she is going to do.